either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird Shorts. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And today, it's been a while since we've done a short.
It is.
We were originally going to do one, and then you couldn't remember which one you watched, so...
False. Netflix uploaded a second one.
Okay, so there were two that came up. Okay, so... Yeah. We didn't want to end up also in, like, a last short where we tried to do the Beastmaster, and then we watched two completely different movies.
But I found a delightful series that way.
Yes. We decided to do both or a little odd comparison of the two Yin-Yang masters that are on Netflix at the moment.
Yeah, so there's Yin-Yang Master and then Yin-Yang Master Eternal...
Dream of Eternity.
Dream of Eternity. So probably going to just call Yin-Yang Master and Dream of Eternity just Dream of Eternity to kind of help separate these two.
Yes.
But I'm kind of glad we are talking about both of them because they're weirdly related. Yeah,
oddly related, but also we don't have enough knowledge of Chinese mythology and lore to really also do a deep dive.
Yeah, and on top of that, so from what I understand, because I tried my darndest to get more information on this, because I really liked both of these movies.
Yeah.
So from what I understand, this originally started off as a novel book with a bunch of short stories that all tied into some arguably more classical mythology.
Yes, Dream of Eternity is based off of a novel, and then the Yin-Yang Master is based off a mobile game called Onyoji.
Yes. However, I think the book and the mobile game are related to each other. So I think the mobile game took inspiration from the book, and then these two movies took inspiration from both of those branches.
Okay.
So I think that's why there's the weird overlap between characters, character names, somewhat similar storytelling, and somewhat similar plot. I think that's kind of where it comes from, but I couldn't get my hands on the novel, and I wasn't gonna buy the game.
Yeah.
But I might look more into the game, because I really liked the movie, and if the characters are similar, maybe.
Yeah, and, I mean, I love mythology and lore. I just didn't have time because I didn't get to these movies until last week, and this is like one of the few that I haven't really prepared much for, because this weekend I watched these in parts because I ended up taking, like, on Saturday and Sunday, like 2.5 hour naps.
Nice. I mean, worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel better, but
that's good.
It's still just one of those, like, God damn, I got so much other shit to do.
Yeah, but I will say, while both of these movies, and we'll go into them more, I liked both of them separately and kind of together. I'm used to movies that don't really have anything to do with each other, even though they claim to be part of the same universe or whatever. I don't think anybody else who is going to be watching these movies will have any background knowledge, which is arguably too bad, because right now the reason we're watching these is because Netflix currently holds the licensing to distribute here in the North American audience.
Yeah.
Which is awesome and great, and I'm really glad that more of this sort of stuff is getting out to a really wide audience. I mean, it's been recommended all over my Netflix for me. I didn't have to, like, find it.
Okay. Yeah, and on the other hand, have been just focusing on my DVD backlog as I buy more.
Yes.
And I have not been... I think this is the first time I've watched Netflix in, like, a month or two at this point.
Making it worth your pay.
Yeah, I guess.
But I've seen quite a lot of people going on who regularly review new Netflix stuff, and they're also getting into this, and you know, it is good.
Yeah.
But it is kind of a weird one where I don't think almost anybody in the North American audience is going to get their hands on the source material. And
that's a lot hearing that coming from you, because you are our resident kung fu movie expert.
Yeah, which, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, both these movies kind of took me out of left field. I knew that they were, like, a thing.
Yeah.
But both of these are very new-ish movies.
Yeah, Dream of Eternity came out last year, and the Yin-Yang Master came out this year.
Yeah, and I think they filmed in 2019, but it took a year or two for one of them to come out, and Netflix, for some reason, just kind of bang bang threw them both out there real quick in succession for newcomers to the kung fu world.
Yeah, and this was a weird one for me because for the most part, whenever I get my hands on a kung fu movie, it's from Hong Kong.
Yes,
and both of these were strictly made in China, which there is a big distinction between.
Oh yeah, and the
both.
Storytelling style, I think, especially for like kung fu movies that especially have made it over here, that are like Hong Kong kung fu movies, they definitely lean more towards a character-driven storyline.
Yeah.
The plot is arguably a little bit more straightforward. You're going to have that tangled spaghetti web. That's just kind of how these kung fu movies are. That's the beast that they are.
Yeah.
But this was the first time that we really get to see a good example of like plot-driven versus character-driven kung fu.
Yeah, this one, some of the style reminds me a little bit of what we've seen in some Bollywood movies.
Yeah. And this is going to be a hard one because I don't want to spoil anything because these are both pretty new, and I do think both of them are worth a watch.
Yeah.
I would argue, though, that you could pick one.
I agree, too, and I think at the end I'll say which one I would recommend over the other, because I do have... I do have thoughts on both of them, and I mean, each one of these probably is worth an episode in themselves.
Oh, yeah.
With, like, all the lore to talk about and just history, but there's just too much, and
on top of that, I think for most people, you're gonna watch this as, like, a fun evening video. It's not gonna be your next go-to, like, fun Kung Pao movie.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the one you watched first, because I actually watched them in opposite order of how you watched them.
Yeah, so I watched Dream of Eternity first because when I logged onto Netflix at the time, this was the only one I found.
Okay.
And then after you logged in, you're like, there's two of these frickers. I was like, oh, news to me.
Yeah, why not do both?
So we did both.
Yeah.
So Dream of Eternity, both of these are your standard kung fu, lot of CGI, mostly CGI, set in ye olde times.
Yeah.
Unnecessary physics are just turned right on off. We can all float and jump real far.
How you described this one to me was a snake is trying to eat the world while there's a bromance going on.
That is this movie.
Yeah.
I will say, though, this one is the one that is more character plot driven.
Yeah.
So if you struggle a lot with these kung fu films, especially the foreign ones whose translation it's good, but I wouldn't say it's great. This would probably be the one I would lean towards more, just because it is a lot easier to figure out who everybody is, because we get introduced to the cast really well. We also get introduced to, like, how relationships for everyone work. We know what everybody's special powers and abilities are, and there is an actual progression between the main character, his feelings towards his master, this new friend, bromance guy, the dead guy, the evil guy. The whole works. You get a full picture, even though it is a little tangled and messy. It's
very much... Their relationship is very much Naruto Sasuke.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except more bromancy instead of, I'm going to accidentally try to kill you because I'm a child and don't realize the consequences of my actions.
Yes. And I will say, unlike some kung fu movies that lean a little hard on the bromance, this one felt pretty genuine, and, like, the progression of their friendship was really nicely paced.
Yeah.
Like, there was no, like, oh my god, we're meant to be together. No, there's good bro friends.
Yeah.
I will say that this one, the magic system is the weaker part of the two, I think.
Yes, I will agree with that. I thought this one was very... I'll say on the softer side of magic, where the rules weren't clearly defined to us. I'm sure they're more defined than what we perceive them as.
This is the one based off of the video game. So I think...
Oh, no, this one's based off the book series.
Is it?
Yeah, the other one's the one that's based off
Okay,
the
that
game
makes
series.
that makes more sense. Because this one, yeah, everything's kind of... You know that magic works. You're not told how, you're not really told, like, a lot of details.
Yeah.
There are cool demons in this movie. The character designs are spot fucking on.
Well,
We don't get to know them very well.
Well, and on top of that, the demons are very human-like.
Yes. And that's pretty typical for a, super fantasy kung fu movie. Everybody's kind of humanoid-esque, because, like,
Yeah,
that's just...
It makes me think of... They're more defined. They're kind of like Cho's Journey to the West.
Oh, yeah.
It's very much like that, but more humanoid, kind of lining up with the yokai and Takashi Miike's 13 Assassins.
Yeah, they remind me of that a lot. They also kind of remind me of, like, really dope level characters that you unlock later in a thing.
Yeah, very RPG-like.
They're very RPG-esque. There's a lot of, what's your hair doing? What's that weapon? Why is your weapon a giant paintbrush, sir?
Sword surfing. Well, he's the mad painter, so yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, play on words for no reason. Like, we don't know any backstory to most of the demons.
No.
All we know is that, like, they work together so good.
Yeah, and this one definitely is theatrically more landscape-like in the way it's shot and presented, because there's so many shots of, like, green screen of, like, we're in the middle of the Arctic for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why half this movie is in the North Pole, but it is.
Yeah, it definitely, of the two, is the more cinematic of them as well.
It is,
It's a lot artsier, I would say, in its shots and composition.
And on top of that, the other, like...
I apologize if anyone heard that before I cut it off. That is my alarm for the weekend finds for this week.
Ah, there you go.
Yes.
But anyway, this movie... So, it is a very close draw for these movies CGI-wise, which, whether or not you like it, is a huge part of these fantasy kung fu movies.
Okay, I will say, of the two, the CGI, this one is better. It's smoother, and it's more realism than...
Yes, this one's definitely a lot less cartoony than the other one is.
Yeah.
Not like the other one isn't, quote-unquote, a cartoon by any stretch of the word, but the characters don't have cartoony expressions, or... No one bounces.
Yeah, and the other one, its CGI is very much in line with, like, a rougher Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, and both CGIs, especially for the grand scale and the amount of CGI going into both of these, look great. But I will say there was a couple of spots in Yinyang Master where we noticed blips, specifically with a couple specific characters that we didn't see at all with Dream of Eternity, which was really nice because you do spend a lot of time on a giant snake.
Yeah.
Who is very CGI'd.
Yeah, and... Yeah, well, okay, so... By the way, premise of pretty much both of these movies is that there is this, and I'm going to butcher names. I am sorry, I do not know any Chinese.
I listened to 2 different interviews about this, and I still can't get them.
Yeah, so on both of them, there is a giant snake called Xingliu.
Uh-huh. Giant snake, got it.
Xingliu. I apologize. And so he is supposed to be the world devourer, kind of Leviathan-like.
Yeah.
And
Odin into the world sort of thing.
Yeah, and he does actually come from mythology, even though he's not portrayed like his mythological counterpart, and especially Dream of Eternity.
Yeah, Dream of Eternity, he's a literal snake.
Yeah. And both of the main characters is named Qing Ming.
But they're played very... they are not the same character somehow.
Yeah. In this one, Qing Ming is very much... He kind of reminds me of a less horny version of the monk from... Fox Dude and Kagome. I can't remember. Inuyasha. Yeah.
Yes. He very much has the whole, like, I'm a young, like, world-saving priest monk, fill in term here. My master has recently died, and it is on my shoulders to carry the world. So he's very much that character. Whereas the other one, A, we don't get to know him very well.
Yeah.
And B, he's just kind of there.
Yeah, and so Dream of Eternity, it's the four masters from the four cardinal directions who are supposed to come together
Yes.
to restore the power of the guardian spirits to prevent the giant snake. I'm not going to try and butcher that name again. From rising from its vessel.
Yes.
Where its vessel and its spirit have been split.
Yes.
And I do know that a lot of the cardinal directions are based off of the mythological creatures associated with those directions. I did some research into this kind of stuff years ago, but I can't remember a good chunk of it anymore.
Yeah, and both of these movies lean in to, like, mythology, as far as I can tell, because, again, I'm by no means an expert in this mythology realm, but they do lean in a little bit, but boy, how do they just kind of take the general gist and run with it. Yeah. Which is fine. I liked it. Yeah. I didn't feel like I was missing anything.
No, I didn't either. I mean, it just felt like for me, it felt like just diving into any fantasy world that they've just thrown a bunch of elements together from, like, Lord of the Rings or Willow or some other, like, high fantasy.
Oh yeah, it's a full high fantasy world, and while it's not as defined as some other high fantasy worlds, and it's not even as defined as, like, some kung fu fantasy worlds, it's got its rules, its limitations, and honestly, we don't split up into a lot of different sets. We've only really got, like, the Arctic, which you don't care about, you just need to know the frozen wasteland. Don't care anything else about that. Yeah. We have a town, and then we have, like, the main central hub.
Yeah, the Temple of Celestial Study or something.
Sure. The courtyard part.
Well, and so there is actually a distinction in the types of movies. Even though they're both action, drama, fantasy movies, Dream of Eternity plays more out like a whodunit Sherlock-style plot than over anything. Because
for sure.
That's the big focus of the plot.
Is who's the bad guy, what's the bad guy's motive, and like, how do we stop him? Which I liked a lot because most of these high fantasy ones are very action heavy, and while this one had plenty of action, it was nice to have a twist and turn plot to go along with it. I wouldn't say twist and turn is like oh my god, you can't figure out, you can totally figure out who it is. But it's very dramatic in the way that it's telling its story. Yeah,
for me, it was very head-jerking back and forth of, like, wait, who is this person? I saw them 2 minutes ago, but I don't remember anything about them. Cut back to this person, cut back here.
That is the weakest part of this, is while we don't have a lot of sets, quote-unquote, but we do have a ton of into someone's head to remember fill-in plot point here. Yeah. And it happens at whiplash speed, which is annoying, and honestly, like, if you're not paying close attention, you're gonna miss something.
Yeah, and this is the one where on Sunday I took a long nap in between. Yeah. And so, like, that, I think that just messed with the viewing in general. I mean, I watch movies in parts, but, like,
this one specifically would really mess you up.
Yeah, it was just like those parts where it's like, okay, I am gonna fall asleep, need to pause. Oh, there's 2 hours gone. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a bit of a down for this movie. I wouldn't say it's movie breaking.
No, it's not. It's not truly detrimental to it as a whole.
No, and honestly, it just kind of felt like a device that hadn't been fully fleshed out yet. So I would be interested to see, especially if, I mean, we've already made a second one. So I would be interested to see if we continue this plot of, like, it's in kind of the same theme. Like, I would be interested to see that more developed farther down, because we know it works. One of my favorite franchises, that's the entire basis of the theme.
Fast and Furious?
Detective D.
Oh, Detective D. That's right, I've seen one of those because of you.
Yes, I absolutely love that franchise, and that's the whole point of that kung fu action movie. Yeah. So, like, I know that this plot device can work. Yeah. But I don't think they fully finished, like, developing it in this world.
No, for me, it felt like, you know how they do, like, anime tie-in movies?
Yeah, this very much felt like that.
Yeah, where we're supposed to know a little bit more about these characters, or they're kind of rushing the character development or story just for the sake of, like,
to get it all
getting to the point. Yeah.
Yeah, it did feel a lot like that, which is too bad, but at the same time, like, again, by no means the worst one I've seen.
No, not at all. It made me think of kind of like when I was watching Terraform Mars.
Oh, uh-huh.
I thought it was going to be a live adaptation of, and this is a weird one because normally we see like an animated adaptation for or tie-ins to like live actions.
Mm-hmm.
Terraform Mars is a live action tie-in to the animated series.
Yeah.
Where it's the story of the second ship they send.
Yeah.
And not the first one. And it took me like about 30 minutes into the movie of like, well, they changed this up. Oh, they got rid of all that extra stuff that they had. And then it's like, oh yeah, that stuff develops after this mission. And it's like, it's one of those weird, it feels like it's a weird tie-in.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like we're either missing some plot points, or this is a sequel to a movie that hasn't been made yet. Yeah,
or it's some tie-in prequel movie.
Exactly. Speaking of the tie-in prequel movie, just Yin-Yang Master.
Yeah.
That's the other one of the trio. How did you like this one?
Well, question first off. You said there was already a sequel to Dream of Eternity?
Okay, so like these two movies are in quote-unquote the same world.
Yeah.
But they're not. So that's the part I'm still trying to figure out. I've done what I can research-wise, but from what I understand, you know, both of these movies saw the same-ish source material, which isn't the same source material because that was already developed source material.
Okay.
And so, like, weird branch tree-wise, these movies are cousins and happen to come out at the same time, making them appear in the family tree like weird siblings.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I did absolutely no research on this, so I am blind. But yes, so the Yinyang Master is a similar premise that there is this ever-present snake deity. This one actually having multiple heads.
Yeah, this is a 5-headed snake.
I think it's 7.
It's got a lot of heads.
It's got many. We don't ever see all its heads. I think in the mythology it's supposed to have 7.
Okay.
And this one is about a disgraced palace guard who is on a vendetta mission to track down and capture the Yin-Yang Master,
yes,
who is also disgraced, half human, half monster, while there is a side chick who is supposedly half human, half monster.
I think she's all human, and she wants to be a monster.
Yeah, and is trying to also find the Yin-Yang Master, thinking he's the master.
Yes, and there's also another side chick who's the head of the Yin-Yang people?
Yeah, she's chief.
Yeah, she's chief, and there's a weird love triangle going on. Not really. It's mostly just the one girl who wishes she was a monster in love with Master, and Master has nothing to does not care about her much.
So I do think that she is part monster.
Okay.
But as I said, humans can't be what's the term? They're familiars.
Yes.
So because she's part human, she can't be a familiar, and only actual monsters can be familiars.
That makes sense. I read it as she was raised by monsters.
Maybe.
And that's why she went out looking for it, because I think that the tree lady and the moth lady are, like, helped raise her or saved her or something like that. Yeah. Either way, same ending conclusion.
Yeah, all this time there's, and the big thing is that this dragon scale or snake scale, whatever the hell they call it, has been stolen.
Yeah, so there's this magic scale. It's been stolen. This one kind of tries to do a whodunit, but it tells you whodunit, like, immediately. Yeah. So, like, But they do hold off on his motivations for a while. Yes, they do. And this movie definitely has, right from the get-go, has a more magical Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragons feel than Dream of Eternity. Dream of Eternity focused a lot on its characters, whereas Yin-Yang Master focused a ton on its side characters and world building. And completely did nothing for the main characters. Like, the actual main character, the disgraced guard, you can completely forget that he's in this movie and you're fine. Yeah. And, I mean, it's... I do appreciate the more
it feels like a more developed world.
Yes, and the world reminds me a lot of the first Hellboy movie, where...
Real quick, I apologize for all the children running in the background.
It is in the afternoon on a beautiful day.
Yes. So, anyway, it reminded you of what?
It reminded me of the first Hellboy movie. I think it's the first one. No, maybe it's the second one. Where they go and they find the alley of other demons and monsters.
I think that's the first one. I think it's when they're trying to find Fish Boy.
Yeah, and this movie felt like an extension of that back alley. But instead of just having a little tiny back alley, it's an entire floating island world.
It made me think of a little bit of Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, high fantasy going on with this one.
Yeah.
Which I liked a lot, and I thought the CGI portion fit really nicely. It was just a little weird to constantly be reminded that we're supposed to have a main character.
Yeah, and the CGI in this one is very more cartoonish.
Yes, especially since we focus so much on the, like, side characters.
Yeah.
And the side characters in this one, unlike the first one, the side characters in this one are proper monsters. So we have ferrets who steal shit, and they look like ferrets. Yeah, which
I love that part where, like, they're first revealed, and it's that joke of 6 ferrets in a trench coat.
Yeah, stacked on top of each other trying to buy a movie ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And, like, even the humanoid monsters in this one, like the tree lady, like the moth lady, are arguably more monster-y looking than the other movie. The other movie is just straight up humans in costumes and maybe a pair of wings slapped on the back.
Oh, yeah.
This one, the character designs are really detailed and a lot of fun to look at.
Yeah.
Every background monster is interesting and there's not a lot of repeats.
Yeah, and especially like when they're in the town and it's just a completely bizarre world compared to what we've seen previously.
It's got a lot of... There's even, like, some, like, Star Wars feel vibes to it, where, like, normal things are weird and gross to us, but everyone else seems to think this is a normal way to eat worm noodles. Yeah,
which is also why it alludes that she is part monster, because she is eating the foods having...
Yeah.
It's normal to her.
Yeah. And... Which is... kind of puts this one at a weird spot, because to me, I like a more... interesting world.
Yeah.
Especially because I spend a lot of my time, like, if I'm going to, like, really enjoy a movie, part of that is rewatching the movie a couple times. And visually, this one lends itself to multiple watchings better.
Yeah.
There's a lot of background shit going on.
It's just, unfortunately, it's a bit rough.
Unfortunately is a bit rough. The story plot is kind of straightforward, and there's not a whole lot that goes on as far as, like, any type of relationship.
Yeah.
We get kind of one scene for everybody to become best friends forever, and that's supposed to solidify an entire war.
Yeah, and I think I think what this suffers from a little bit too, is that it's very much a setup movie, as we do see there is a credit at the end where, I don't know if it ties into, like, animated series that's supposed to come with it, or it's
more video game. Like, it's hard to say, but it's clearly meant to tie into another bigger thing. Yeah, and I mean it is a bit jarring, especially because they do bounce around with the character relations, and like you said, this one is very much more world building, than it is character driven. Yes,
and I mean the little bit of character they have, I would say. They have more character than in Dream of Eternity. Dream of Eternity, they're very
dry.
They're very dry and almost one-dimensional, where there's a little bit more to this group of characters.
Yeah, and the other thing that's nice is this group of characters, while they are not a lot going on here, we do get a nice, distinct balance between, like, motivating factors, personality types, and values, whereas the first one, pretty much everybody's value and motivation was exactly the same, which kind of led to a lot of people almost being the same person.
Yeah, and even this one, like, their motivation just, there's not really an evolution, because, like, from 1 minute to the next, they're like, oh, I hate you, you're coming into the city with me. Well, I'll team up with you for a little bit, and then I'll come into the city with you. And they're like, alrighty.
With the exception of exactly 2 characters. ferrets,
Yeah.
and Red Ghost.
Yeah. Well,
which is too bad because both of those are incredibly side characters.
Yeah, well, them and the half monster chick.
Yeah, she has out of like the humanoid more-ish main side characters, she definitely has the most arc. It's kind of left unfulfilled, though.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, all of them are left completely unfulfilled because there's not really, like, even our main character, they just kind of skip ahead at the end of, like, oh, yeah,
he goes
this
on
is
to
this.
do stuff. Yeah. Yeah, which is disappointing, because visually, this movie looks great. The bad guy, like, looks dope.
Yeah.
He is kind of more boring compared to the other one as far as the fight scene goes. Partially because he relies on a weird monster hand to do a lot of the fighting for him.
Yeah,
the monster hand is dope.
Yeah, monster hand is cool. Like, all the creatures in this one are interesting.
They really are. But the actual fighting scene, like, if you're in it for the over-the-top fighting, this one's... it lacks the whole, like, Dragon Ball Z-esque encounter. It has it, but it's a lot weaker than the other movie.
Yeah.
But... If you prefer more, the War from Lord of the Rings style fighting, where it's a little bit more realistic, it's a little bit more hands-on, and we're not flying at each other from 3,000 miles up in the sky.
Yeah.
This one has that fighting done a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, it does have those very string moments to it.
Oh, definitely. There's a couple of scenes that are just, woof.
Very, you're on wires. Like,
yeah, a little bit too much leg movement.
Yeah, just a bit. But, I mean, I don't know. It just... to be fair, I haven't seen a kung fu movie like either of these in a long time.
Sure.
So, for me, it was a little bit jarring again, just seeing it. One not really knowing what to expect with either of them.
Sure.
But it definitely was... I don't know how to explain it. It's
there is a way to do the over the top jumping on wires well, and we've seen it before.
Yeah,
this one doesn't quite have the weight to the characters that is needed.
Yeah, like Kung Fu Hustle.
Yeah, that one's ability for wire jumping. Everything feels really like everyone has weight to them, whereas the characters in this one, unfortunately, especially the female actors, I don't know if it was just poor direction or poor wiring, but everyone kind of feels like they're floating through water as opposed to power jumping.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit disappointing, but honestly, the amount of power jumping in this movie is kind of minimized for a fantasy kung fu movie.
Yeah.
So, like, while it's not great, it's overlookable.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to talk about on this one either without, like, dissecting, like, oh, this is what this myth is, that's what this creature is, like...
Yeah, and there is a lot of background creatures that they pulled from quite a few places.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the other one, because the other one has more character development and arguably more story, this one is just kind of visual eye candy.
Yeah, and, I mean, I'm not opposed to that, too, because... who was I talking to? I think I was talking to my brother, or it might have been... Sugi, I think it was Sugi, because I think we were talking about Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
And, like, how it's not a good movie, but it's good when you need to shut your mind off to stuff.
And I think Yin-Yang Master falls into that category pretty nicely.
Yeah, and... yeah, just thinking back on them, and it just might have been my mood for the weekend. I personally liked the Yin-Yang Master better, even though, like, I don't normally like setup movies.
Yep.
I enjoyed it because it didn't have to think too much, and there wasn't the mental whiplash of Dream of Eternity.
Yeah, a lot of people have been saying that, especially since both of these have been out and being promoted recently on Netflix, a lot of people have been preferring Dream of Eternity, and while I do like the characters better, honestly, everything in the movie, minus the side characters, is better done in Dream of Eternity. I had more fun watching Yin-Yang Master.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I could overlook, like, all the, like, well, this is a stupid plot point. Okay, cool fight scene. The creatures are cool. Transformations are cool. Like,
yeah, like, everybody, and, like, unlike Dream of Eternity, who, all four of the Guardians are supposed to be very different.
Yeah.
Well, we kill them very quickly, first off.
Well,
we kill off the one interesting one.
and even then, like,
They're all so similar.
They're just so flat. And
Yeah.
I actually had a couple issues with Dream of Eternity when I was watching it, because the main character and the side guy, the guy who takes over,
Yeah.
there are scenes where they're wearing like the exact same
Yes.
outfit and like their hair is exactly the same.
Yeah.
And like
They have a very similar voice too.
similar voice. The only way I could tell them apart was like their cheeks and their nose.
Yeah.
Like that was like,
is very similar character design.
yeah.
And for some movies that's great and that's what you want, but it was kind of weird for that movie, especially since we have such really diverse and interesting demon companions to work with.
Yeah.
So like why can't we go a little bit more over the top with some outfit choices?
Yeah. Well, and maybe I'm interpreting them a little bit differently, where like the Yin-Yang Master feels very much like folk tale,
Yeah.
where like it's supposed to be over the top, where Dream of Eternity has a little bit of folk elements to it, but it's supposed to be more based in like realism.
Yeah, it's definitely not as wild and crazy as Yin-Yang Master is.
Yeah.
Which, for some movies, is great, but when both of these movies are claiming to have a similar source material, or the same source material, depending on how you read that, I mean, I kind of wish these two could, like, be squished together into, like, the perfect movie.
Yeah.
But if I have to pick one, I'm gonna pick the one that, like, visually entertains me the most.
Yeah.
Even if that means I'm sacrificing plot, if I'm sacrificing some really dope-ass fighting scenes, and arguably sacrificing, like, character development.
Yeah.
And, like, it is kind of a hard call, because, yeah, we're picking on one, but, like, they're close. They are very, like, there's not, like, a huge leap and jump between them.
Yeah. And on top of that, like, speaking of eye candy wise,
Yeah.
Dream of Eternity definitely has the very pop idol looking characters.
Yes, everyone is young and beautiful.
The Yin-Yang Master, a couple of the characters are definitely younger.
I do appreciate that they picked, and I've seen a couple of other movies with him in it, but I'm not super familiar with his work. The main half demon, half human character.
Yeah.
Being played by that actor, he has a more filled out, mature face and body shape, which works really nicely for him, especially later on, which I don't want to reveal what happens, but like later on, it really helps his character development. Very loose character development.
Yeah.
But like, and on top of that, the villain, once he transforms as well, they went with a very anime-esque design for him, which works great, but they also picked an actor who is a lot more fleshed out than a lot of the actors and character designs in Dream of Eternity. Dream of Eternity, everyone feels like the young, beautiful K-pop star, whereas in Yin-Yang Master, everyone feels a little bit more like a kung fu star, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think probably... And normally I don't really recommend movies based off moods. I generally recommend movies based off preferences or how I watch a movie. It's like, what's next in the stack? Okay, that's what I'm watching today.
Yeah.
I honestly would recommend these movies when you're in a different mood for something, in different moods.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
The Yin-Yang Master I would recommend if you're there for a good time, it's very... And even then, like, if you're into anime...
It is very anime.
It's definitely fitting for that. If you're wanting a more serious drama, go with Dreams of Eternity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Dreams of Eternity is filmed and shot much more like a drama.
Because Dreams of Eternity is very much drama with a little bit of action, and the Yin-Yang Master is action with a little bit of drama.
Yeah, that's a good sum up of them.
Yeah, so... What about you, Chris? Which ones would you recommend, or final thoughts or recommendations?
I would say both of them are definitely worth a watch, especially if you like fantasy kung fu movies.
Okay.
Both of these fall very happily into that camp, and it's been a little while since we've had something new and fresh for that genre, especially on big platforms like Netflix.
Yeah.
So I do think both of them deserve a watch. I would not watch them together like we did.
No.
I would think of them as completely separate movies that happen to have a similar title, and watch one on one weekend and the next one on a different weekend.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was actually planning on this weekend watching the 8-diagram pole master.
Oh, yes.
That one of my buddies in the Goat Pit recommended.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, but I'm holding that probably for a weekend or two, just because these are a lot of kung fu movies. Like,
and if kung fu movies aren't your jam, they can get kind of like any other like strong genre movie.
Yeah,
they can get a lot fast.
Yeah, and both of these movies are, I'll say, relatively long. They're about 2 hours apiece.
Yeah. I mean, could you get through both of them in an afternoon? Sure. Would I recommend it? No.
But if you are determined to watch them both in a weekend, watch one day, watch one the next day. Just
yeah, definitely.
Give yourself a little time. If you are feeling a little tired, take that nap in between.
Just be ready to forget who everyone is.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah. So those are the Yin-Yang Master movies.
Good movies.
Yeah, might do a little bit of a deep dive later on, but
yeah, honestly, like the concept of it really intrigued me, and I'm gonna see if I can get my hands on the book at least.
Yeah.
And I do want to look into the game, because if the character designs are based off of that, it would be really cool. I really liked that aspect of it. It just doesn't seem to be very readily available here.
Yeah, and I definitely need a book on Chinese mythology and cryptids or creatures.
Yeah, it would help a lot, I think.
Yeah, and this is definitely one thing I'm lacking in mythologically, so.
Yep.
But, anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird Shorts.
Thanks for listening.
Peace!